Have you ever felt the weight of the world pressing down on you? The kind that makes your chest tight and your legs heavy, as if every step forward is an impossible climb? Maybe it was a goal you thought you could reach, a dream that suddenly seemed too far, or a personal failure that whispered relentlessly in the quiet of the night. In that exact moment, when exhaustion seeps into your bones and despair wraps its cold fingers around your mind, it feels easier to give up, to surrender, to simply let life continue without you in the race. The frustration, the fear, the hopelessness, they all swirl together until you wonder if trying is even worth the pain. But in the midst of the dark storm, there exists a word, a single concept that holds a quiet, unyielding power, one that has guided countless souls through their lowest points: Ganbaru. It is more than perseverance. It is the subtle, almost sacred decision to endure, to push, to continue even when your heart screams that it cannot. Imagine someone, not unlike yourself, standing at the edge of defeat, broken by circumstance, beaten by life's relentless challenges, yet finding within them the courage to rise again. Their story is not extraordinary because they were stronger than you, but because they remembered that there is a force in persistence, a disciplined patience that can transform despair into triumph. This word, this principle carries with it centuries of lived experience, a quiet testament to human resilience. And as we explore its origin and meaning, you will see that the moment you feel ready to quit is precisely the moment where your life can pivot, where the smallest choice, to hold on, to try once more, can create ripples that shape your entire future. Ganbaru is waiting, and it might just be the key to everything you thought you had lost. Kenji was an ordinary man facing an extraordinary weight, a life that seemed determined to test every fiber of his being. Each morning, he woke to the same empty room, the same thin walls that barely kept out the cold, and the same echo of his own doubts bouncing back at him. His hands were rough, scarred from work that barely covered the rent, and his mind was heavier than any burden he had ever carried. The world seemed indifferent, success a distant shore he could see but never reach, as if the universe itself conspired to remind him of his limitations. Every effort, every small victory, was swallowed by misfortune. The job lost due to circumstances beyond his control, friendships fractured by misunderstandings, and moments of hope crushed under the weight of repeated failure. He often found himself staring at the ceiling late at night, wondering if surrendering would finally grant him relief from the relentless ache in his chest. "Maybe this is all I am," he whispered to the darkness, the thought of giving up both terrifying and alluring. The despair was not just external, it was etched deep into his sense of self, whispering that he was not enough, that his dreams were foolish, and that his life was destined to remain ordinary. Yet, in the middle of one particularly cold evening, as the wind rattled the fragile window panes and shadows played across the floor, he encountered someone who would quietly change the course of his journey. The mentor was not grand or imposing, but there was a stillness about him, a calm that seemed to say he had walked the same rocky path and survived. He did not offer easy solutions or comforting words, but he posed questions that pricked at Kenji's mind and stirred something dormant within him, a subtle challenge to endure, to rise, to find strength where none seemed to exist. And though the word was not yet spoken, there was a sense that this figure carried a philosophy, a guiding principle that had the power to transform despair into determination. Kenji could feel its presence like a quiet flame flickering in the corner of a dark room, fragile yet persistent, calling him to notice it, to engage with it, to allow it to illuminate even the smallest steps forward. He did not understand it fully, but the seed was planted, and with it, the faintest hint that life's most formidable struggles were not signals to stop, but invitations to discover a depth of resilience he had never known. In that moment of darkness, the possibility of change hovered at the edge of his awareness, fragile and tentative, waiting for him to reach for it, to allow the invisible hand of this ancient wisdom to guide him beyond the pain he thought would define him forever. Kenji was still weary, still battered by circumstance, yet something within him had shifted, the faint glimmer of hope threading through despair, promising that the story of his struggle might yet be rewritten. The mentor looked at Kenji with a quiet intensity, as if he could see every fracture of doubt etched into his soul. "There is a word, he began softly. A way of facing life when it feels unbearable. It is called Ganbaru. To Ganbaru is to persist, to continue moving forward even when your body is tired and your mind screams to stop. It is not blind stubbornness, nor reckless defiance, but a disciplined, deliberate choice to keep trying, to honor effort above outcome, and to trust that endurance shapes not just moments, but character. He paused, letting the weight of the concept settle, then shared a story of his own youth, a tale Kenji would never forget. Years ago, the mentor had faced failure so complete that it seemed impossible to rise again. Each attempt ended in disappointment. Each effort met with more doors closing than opening. Yet he kept moving, day after day, holding on to that single phrase in his mind. Remember Ganbaru. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, opportunities emerged from persistence. Doors that had seemed permanently shut began to open, and the trajectory of his life shifted. It was never sudden, never magical. It was incremental, painful, and real. Kenji listened, the words stirring a mix of skepticism and hope. Could a single concept change the course of his struggles? The mentor smiled faintly and encouraged him to try, not as a leap into certainty, but as a small act of defiance against despair. At first, Kenji's attempts were clumsy, his energy scattered, and the results minimal. He failed repeatedly, felt the familiar tug of hopelessness, and questioned whether even this small act of perseverance was worth the effort. Yet, every time the urge to quit rose, he whispered to himself, "Remember Ganbaru," and took one more step. Slowly, the weight began to shift. A task once overwhelming became manageable. A goal once distant appeared reachable. He learned to honor effort itself, to recognize that each attempt, however imperfect, carried the seed of progress. There were still setbacks, moments of doubt that clawed at his resolve, but the mantra anchored him, reminding him that endurance was not a guarantee of immediate success, but a promise that life responds to persistence in ways often unseen. By the time weeks passed, Kenji noticed subtle changes, a stronger sense of control, a resilience he had never felt, a quiet confidence that emerged not from winning, but from the act of refusing to surrender. The philosophy of Ganbaru was no longer abstract. It was lived, breathed in every deliberate step he took, shaping his identity from someone defined by obstacles into someone defined by unwavering effort. He began to see that persistence itself held value, that the very act of continuing in the face of difficulty transformed despair into hope, uncertainty into growth, and fear into courage. And with that realization, Kenji felt the first genuine spark of power in his own hands. The day of the ultimate challenge arrived with a weight that pressed on Kenji's chest like a storm about to break. This was no ordinary test. It was the moment where every failure, every moment of despair threatened to define him forever. As he stood at the threshold, staring at the obstacle that had seemed insurmountable for months, a familiar knot of fear tightened in his stomach. What if he failed again? What if all the effort, all the small victories and incremental progress had been for nothing? The temptation to turn away, to retreat into the safety of giving up, pulsed through him with a seduction that was both cruel and familiar. His hands trembled, his mind raced with the echo of every past disappointment, and for a fleeting second, the world felt impossibly heavy. Then, in the quiet of that tension, Kenji felt the mantra stirring within him, a gentle yet unyielding voice whispering, "Remember Ganbaru." He repeated it, not as a ritual but as a lifeline, a deliberate choice to stand when every instinct screamed to collapse. Step by step, he moved forward, each motion an act of defiance against fear, each breath a testament to the resilience he had cultivated over countless, small, unseen battles. The path was not smooth. He stumbled, faltered, and felt the familiar pull of doubt. But each time he wavered, the phrase returned, anchoring him to perseverance, to the idea that endurance itself carries meaning beyond immediate results. As the minutes stretched, the challenge transformed from an external trial into an internal confrontation, a test not just of skill or strength, but of identity, of whether he would allow himself to be defined by quitting or by continuing. And then it happened, a shift so subtle yet profound that it nearly escaped notice. A step became a stride, a breath became a surge of energy, and the obstacle that once seemed immovable began to yield under the quiet persistence of his effort. When the final barrier fell, when he crossed the threshold he had feared for so long, the rush of relief and triumph was overwhelming, not because of recognition or reward, but because of the intimate victory over his own limitations. The mentor approached, eyes calm, lips curving in a knowing smile. "This is what Ganbaru teaches," he said softly, placing a hand on Kenji's shoulder. "It is not the heights you reach or the prizes you win, but the growth you carry within, the transformation of despair into quiet strength." Kenji breathed deeply, feeling the weight of the journey settle into a new kind of freedom, a resilience forged through trial, persistence, and the steady repetition of a simple truth. He understood now that each failure, each stumble, had been part of a rhythm leading him to this moment. The challenge had been more than a test of ability. It had been a crucible for character, a reminder that the essence of Ganbaru is not perfection, but the courage to continue, to rise, to endure, and to become someone who refuses to surrender even when the world insists otherwise. And in that realization, Kenji felt a clarity and joy that surpassed achievement itself, a sense of self that had been reshaped by persistence, proving that the deepest victories are those within. Now take a moment and ask yourself, what is your Ganbaru moment? Where in your life are you standing at the edge, tempted to quit, feeling the weight of disappointment pressing down with relentless force? Perhaps it is a dream deferred by circumstance, a goal that seems impossibly far, or a personal struggle that has drained every ounce of your energy. You are not alone in this. Every human being faces moments of fear, doubt, and despair. What separates those who rise from those who surrender is not luck, intelligence, or privilege. It is the decision to persist, to take the next step even when the path is unclear, to embrace the discomfort of effort as a bridge to growth. Research in psychology and neuroscience shows that consistent effort, even small and imperfect, rewires the brain, strengthens resilience, and increases the likelihood of long-term success. Ganbaru is a living embodiment of this principle, the act of commitment in the face of adversity, the choice to continue when giving up feels easier. Think of it as turning pain into purpose, struggle into momentum, and uncertainty into a laboratory for self-mastery. Like Kenji, you may stumble, fail, or question yourself repeatedly, but each action taken in persistence carries a ripple effect that compounds over time, often in ways you cannot yet see. So today, I challenge you to identify that place in your life where you will say, "I will continue, I will endure, I will Ganbaru." Let it be your anchor, your mantra, your quiet power in the moments when fear whispers that surrender is acceptable. Apply it to your daily routines, your relationships, your work, and your personal goals. Notice how small steps taken with consistent effort gradually transform despair into capability, doubt into confidence, and weakness into strength. Reflect on your progress, share your journey with others, and allow the accountability of community to reinforce your commitment. Write down your struggles, celebrate incremental victories, and recognize that true change is born in action, not in wishing or waiting. The transformation you seek does not come from magic or sudden inspiration. It emerges from the disciplined, repeated choice to rise again and again. If you are ready to embrace this, take a deep breath, commit to your Ganbaru moment, and begin today. Share in the comments the challenge you will conquer. Subscribe to continue walking this path of growth and resilience. And remember, every step, no matter how small, brings you closer to the life you are capable of achieving. Your journey begins now, and the power to persist is already within you.